Hey guys, Tommy Carrigan with Tommy Untamed. We've got a great show coming up. Thank you for watching. With Mr. Will Ramsey, who's been on here a million times before. You guys can go to the description. You can find his Twitter, you can find his books, all that good stuff. And just we were just talking beforehand about all the different kind of the assassins: Oswald, Sirhan. I was gonna say John Wilkes Booth, not John Wilkes Booth, John Hinckley, maybe
Ray,
Wilkes
don't
Booth.
forget Ray. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh MLK.
yeah.
Who they
So,
just released a bunch of files on. So
oh,
I think 250,000 files they released that people haven't gone through them yet.
oh, well, there
But
we go.
this is a current thing. Like that what we're going to talk about today has direct relevance to our understanding of history and these releases of information that are coming out about RFK, MLK, and JFK.
All right. Well, I'm gonna hand it over to you, and um, but yeah, just start from where you tell me the kind of the personality changes. They're young. They travel. It's all these sort of sudden things, and it's not. I guess for me, like layman's terms, it's like I would always imagine to be somebody personally aggrieved, and or ex-military who has the skills, and or at the end of their life medically, or just they're old. But it's not that. It seems to kind of be young, and again, not guys who feel like they have nothing left. I mean, like a lot of them are, yeah, like you said, young chicks like good looking dudes. Why do this?
Good question. They're all like 24. Oswald was 24. Chapman was 24. Sirhan's 24. I don't remember Ray's age, but a lot of these guys are young and impressive. Hinckley was fairly young. The Hinckley attempted assassination on Reagan was early 1980, and then Lennon's assassination was December 79. So these two assassinations that would have really changed world history. I mean, the death of Lennon, who was a really public cultural figure, much more so than the other Beatles. And then Reagan would have put in Poppy Bush, right? This kind of sinister figure into real power. He still was the power behind the throne,
Sure.
apparently, but he would actually have ascended to kind of the premier, obviously the presidency. But what ties these two together is this book, The Catcher in the Rye. And so I've titled this presentation Catchers in the Rye because there's a subtext within the book when you read the text, which came out by J.D. Salinger in 1951. There's a real subtext of darkness and degradation and cultural degradation. And a lot of people have complained about this book, about why it's in the public. Why are people reading this about this guy Holden Caulfield, who gets kicked out of all of his private schools and ends up traveling to New York City, Central Park? Why is this guy being pushed onto into the public curriculum and into the consciousness of young impressionable teens? And when you really read the book with a critical eye, like I'm like old now, it's incredible how much stuff is in there that they like there's real violent things, and there's a tie-in with this concept of the catcher that is tied with violence, which really is. And I think it ties the book in, and you'll see in this presentation once I pull up my slides. Chapman, for in specific, was just obsessed with Catcher in the Rye. He wanted to become the messiah of the Catcher in the Rye. He wanted to his identity morphed into Holden Caulfield for some reason, in a strange reason. And Hinckley himself had a copy of the Catcher in the Rye. He knew of Chapman's shooting of Lennon, and he identified with Chapman when he went and supposedly, I mean, there's open questions whether he was the actual trigger man who shot Reagan. Much like I think in my take of the Lennon assassination, Chapman never really got close enough to kill Lennon. Lennon had a very tight, like almost an assassin's skill level of shots, a tight series of shots right around, I think, the left side of his heart, which was like the part where once you blow that out, you're done.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
so somebody who was a pro who knew that made sure that the work was, that it was accurate and the finality, I think, was done. Not somebody who like shot out of rage or something like that. Like somebody really wanted Lennon dead. And if you follow Chapman's movement, and like you mentioned, these people are moving around in weird ways. Hinckley traveled to get to DC to supposedly shoot Reagan. He traveled from the West Coast, and Chapman was in Hawaii traveling around. But he went back and forth with the guy who had a very, he had a penurious, he didn't have a lot of money. How is he getting these tickets to, cross the continent over and over again? Because he had been in New York City earlier. So it's almost like there was an attempt before what took place, I think, December 8th, 79.
And there's a just as like a quick aside, you do have to ask yourself that when in the most obvious and kind of dead horse beaten example of somebody like Greta Thunberg, but I mean you do have to ask yourself when you see other, I mean unless you are outright the son or the child of somebody famous, where it's like whether you don't deserve it, but you do kind of have a built-in platform, whatever. Donald Trump Jr. doesn't seem to be a necessarily remarkable person, but your dad's Donald Trump, so of course you do. Or if you just have a ton of money, you can kind of do whatever you want. But outside of those two, people who ascend out of nowhere, aside from the basic one, like they don't have any talent, why did they rise to the top of the music industry or the podcast industry or the whatever? Regardless of that, which is already a red flag, is kind of the money thing. And it's something that gets glossed over because it's not as in your face as like, well, where did this teenager get like a red Ferrari? Not that. But when you just see them, again, just traveling around, just doing basic things, ask yourself, like, I'm my own boss and I have freedom. If you saw me travel to more than one place in a year, you'd be like, either his show is doing very well or someone's paying him. Because you can't, if you're just young and you don't have those things, nepotism or extreme talent or wealth, that alone is sort of a red flag that a lot of us just ignore. Like, why is this person always on, or David Hogg? Like, they're just
Right.
present all the time. Okay,
Right.
they're not covered in jewelry. Yeah, but like, why are they not at work? Just like little things like
Right.
do you, I mean,
Why don't they have to do a 9 to 5 grind?
yeah,
Like, I
is
mean,
he? I mean, again, unless you're like a freak, you're like Zuckerberg. We're like, yeah, well, he dropped that. He made $1 billion, whatever. Like, just simple things like that. Like, where are you? Where do you not have work tomorrow? How are you again and again and again giving stump speeches? And like, so to me, that always just says there's a hand somewhere, whether they're willingly or unwillingly, knowingly or unknowingly aware of being used. Somebody's using them. So
right. The word you could use is handled. There's a handler or something. And there's weird things with these guys. When you're talking about that, I'm thinking of this guy, Ruth, who was supposed shooter of Trump last year, I think it was,
the golf
where
course
he was,
guy.
yeah, the golf course guy, but he was also involved in Ukraine. What's he doing in Kiev, advocating for this war? And then he lives in, so he's like supposedly building homes for the underprivileged in the east coast of Oahu, and somehow is traveling around. Like those flights are expensive.
Uh-huh.
How's he able to afford that? I don't think he could pay his alimony. So like he owed his ex-wife money and stuff, and but he's traveling around, and then he shows up in freaking Miami. So something strange is very strange about him. And he was also in a Black Rock video with another,
Yeah,
like
I
apparently
mean,
with, yeah, so that's even heightens the high strangeness. And it kind of ties into this whole presentation of these guys traveling around, the weird elements in their interests. Because even Mangione, he is one of the things that we know that he wrote about, the guy who killed the healthcare executive south of Central Park, is that he had an interest in Kaczynski. And Kaczynski's writings, the kind of Luddite writings against modern technocracy or technology, very present, concerns. But we have him writing. But Kaczynski was an MK Ultra victim, like literally
like legitimately not saying it as a joke. I mean, like provably, verifiably, paper trail.
3 years of like it's hardcore torture, and with like the brain thing on with the wires. Like they literally had him wired up like a lab rat. Like this is not a joke. This is all provable.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things is that the guy who was his kind of like doing it was a psychologist who was also involved in doing a write-up on Hitler's mentality too. He wrote The Mind of Adolf Hitler, or helped write it. I can't remember his name, Wallace or something like that, but I have him in the presentation. But so you have this Mangione and actual like mind control elements are around, and this is a guy who underwent this weird personality change. This is a highest high functioning guy. He was the head of his class went from a private school, from a very wealthy family, who went to Palo Alto and was working in AI, and all of a sudden goes under this personality changes and decides he has to take action, much like these other guys. They decide, like Sirhan, I have to kill RFK. He repeats it over and over in his notebooks. Kill RFK, kill RFK, kill
What
RFK.
I don't I probably should know more, but one isn't Mangione. He's from a wealthy family, and I'm pretty sure it was a healthcare family.
Healthcare. Ex
But
oh,
also, wasn't his whole thing like he had surgery and it was, or and he couldn't get back surgery and it was denied, and he was in pain, so he, young dude couldn't go make love, couldn't kind of go out and enjoy life, and it was. I mean, I had my tonsils out after a month of in bed. Yeah, sure, you kind of start to go crazy, but he was that doesn't really gel with the fact that his family's wealthy. Like, what does it matter if you're denied coverage? Just pay out of pocket. Let alone the fact that your family's
point.
also in healthcare.
Right, good point. I
That's
think his family owned like a very famous hotel. They had property.
what I mean. Is
It,
like
his private school was like 50 or 60K a year.
that's what I mean, and
So they're
I don't want
shelling
to
out.
I don't want to make light of it because a lot of people can't afford it. But like,
He was the valedictorian. That was the word
that's
I
not an
couldn't
issue
come
with
up
his
with right now.
family.
Yeah,
That's not
right.
an, he's not. It's not like he's pissed at his dad because he didn't get a Rolls Royce. Like his family would have just paid out of pocket. What like what in God's name's going? You know?
Right. Well, that's the real question because you see this kind of continuity of this something triggers or
Yeah,
switches in these people's personality, and usually they're in a hospital. So
yeah.
Sirhan disappears into a hospital in 2 week for 2 weeks, and he comes out and starts acting real strange and is on the radio with this guy Radio Man. And then same thing with Mangione. Like, why would he risk it all? This is a young guy. Chicks liked him. He's a good-looking
Very
guy.
handsome, got a ton of money. Like, what are you doing,
Tons of
dude?
personality too. Like apparently, like I mean, he's intelligent. He could write, and he's interested
He's
in
just a total
books.
Chad. Like, what are you
He's a
doing,
Chad. He's
man?
a Giga Chad or
Yeah,
a
what are you?
Mega
Yeah,
Chad or
you get
whatever.
Chad. What are you doing?
Why are you throwing it away to shoot some guy at 7 a.m. in the morning? Like, how did he know that this guy was walking out of the hotel at 7 a.m.? That's a big question for me.
Yeah,
Like, how does he know that? And he was moved in to tried like in a skilled way. Like he disguised himself and had all kinds of, camouflage. I think he got caught because he like lowered down his mask in Pennsylvania or something like that. But like he really thought it through. So it's these guys are all strange.
yeah,
James Earl Ray, strange, Sirhan, strange, Chapman, strange, Hinckley, strange.
yeah.
But yeah. But the Catcher in the Rye concept, the thing is there's a weird nexus point for New York City for some strange reason and Central Park because Lennon shot at the Dakota, which is right off of Central Park. And the final scene, the ending of Catcher in the Rye ends in Central Park at the carousel. That's why you have this kind of visual of the horse in the carousel spinning round and round. And then Mangione kills this guy and rides his bike into Central Park and supposedly leaves his stuff at the carousel of Sketch and Ride. Like I couldn't write this, like it's unbelievable. So like there's just weird thing tie-ins to Catchers in the Ride. If you look through this book, there's kind of weird phrases. Salinger was in the same kind of intel department that Heinz Kissinger was in, or Henry Kissinger, which was involved in interrogation. So it was a lot of psychological things going on. They were trying to assess the kind of psychology of these Nazis and whether they could be reformed, put in jail, Nuremberg, or clipped, right? Paper clipped. So Salinger very much knew this kind of in the beginnings of kind of like behavioral psychology and things like that, even before MK Ultra, which officially got its stamp in 1953. So he knew all this, and I think a lot of this stuff came out because they knew they were going to go into the Cold War, and there's like this concept of the cultural Cold War, and there were a bunch of generals who saw that they were going to pivot towards the Soviet Union, right? Especially after the Soviets exploded the atom bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And so this book pops up right around there, 1951. Kinsey's book on the sexual male, which was highly financed by the Rockefellers, was 48. And that information bled over into this book. So you see some of those Kinsey concepts in this. And it's a very strange book in a way because it's very sophisticated in its use of words. Like they mention Albert Pike in this.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a character named Pike. There's also a character that's based off of the guy who wrote Time Life Loose. He was also, and there's a lot, and it's pretty vivid for its time on sexual stuff. So almost every sexual what we used to call deviant behavior is involved in this. So it's like voyeurism, homosexuality, prostitution. I
Yeah,
mean,
now it's
and it
elementary school curriculum.
yeah, so it's all in this, and he and the character Holden Caulfield. Call has a kind of esoteric meaning. So if you're born with a caul over your face, that means you have second sight. So the character himself, and it starts off, he's literally overlooking his fake school, which doesn't exist, Pensy, but he says it's cold as a witch's breast. So it's like he starts off as this, he's a kind of like anti-hero, kind of a dark hero on top of a witch's boob, a cold witch's boob with a call, and it just goes on and on. I mean, if you take this book apart as an adult, it gets so weird because he talks about being split-brained. He makes repetitive statements. He's undergoing transformation. Every time he says he lies like a madman, he's a total liar. And he says he's a sex maniac and stuff like that. I mean, it just goes, he's like schizophrenic. And one of the visuals from the book that you see, he's wearing this hunting hat, but he says, I hunt people in this hat. I shoot people with this hat. So he's violent. He has violent ideation. And that's what I think is kind of interesting in this kind of trigger concept of Chapman and Hinckley is that this book elicits this kind of violence. And so he has this dream of being a catcher, but there's other elements within the book where he sees the words FU spelled out at a museum, and he wants to catch somebody and really bash their brain out. And it's very vividly portrayed. So you see this concept within the title, but also the use of the word in the narrative that's very violent.
Hmm.
But he's under psychoanalysis. He's been like, I mean, he talks about there's transvestitism too in this, sadism. He references a woman's body as a violin. Anti-Christian animus is in this. And Holden Caulfield identifies with the demon, really the demon possessed guys. If you remember the Bible, I think it's what's in the Matthew or something. It's where Christ goes out and heals this guy who has all these demons, and he says, "Let us go into these pigs," and the demons are exorcised, and they go into the pigs, and the pigs go into the water. I don't know if you remember that part of the New Testament, but it's like that's who Holden Caulfield identifies as this guy Legion.
Uh,
So he says, well, Jesus asks him, "What is your name?" And he responds, "My name is Legion, for we are
for
many."
many, yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of Holden Caulfield is so he's on the opposite side. He's not this is not a Christian good figure. This is a guy who references others. He's crying all the time. He's suicidal. He thinks about jumping off like the out of the hotel. He repeats, I swear to God, I'm a madman. He goes into a bar called the Wicker Bar, and that's a whole nother story about pagan sacrifice and stuff like that. It goes all on. It just is incredible. He's like a pyromaniac, chain smoker, and there's elements of this other people have researched. It's pretty clear that there's Masonic elements in this book. At the very end of the book, he's at Central Park and he goes into the Museum of Modern History, goes downstairs to see the Egyptian displays. And so that Egyptian kind of basis is such a central part of Masonry. So he's like living through that. Then and it's also the symbol of going beneath and coming back up. So you're like reborn, a brother
Mm.
under the skin or something. He's also obsessed with his 10-year-old sister Phoebe, and it's not a good obsession. There's a real hint of like incest and real dark stuff, and he's inappropriate with her. And he has it's almost kind of like a pedophile's view of a kid where you think they're adults. There's no way they're an adult, but Phoebe's portrayed as this very sophisticated older kid. And
Uh,
that's the way the book ends. The book ends with Holden Caulfield in Central Park watching Phoebe go around the carousel on these horses. And he said the happiest he's ever been. He's miserable throughout the whole thing. And then he ends up the final chapter, I think it's chapter 26. He's in a mental institution. He's talking to his brother. His sister's out and his parents are out of the picture. Also, the other thing that's interesting is like his parents are very vaguely in the book. So it's almost like they're depersonalized or abstracted. His mom comes into him while he's smoking at home, while he's hiding, and that's about it. So there's no real like parental. It's almost like it's portrayed like this in a lot of Disney movies where there's no mother figure or father figure around a lot of times. And it's like this in the book. So, like, why is all this crazy stuff? And people who've associated the, like, who are pro this book, like Bill Gates, and of all people, I mean, you can't even write this. One of the favorite books of George H.W. Bush is Catcher in the Rye. So the assassin who's obsessed with Catcher in the Rye, who tries to kill Reagan, Bush is fans of that same book. Like he's kind of doing a wink and a nod, in my
Mm.
opinion. Yeah, it's really crazy. Can I show you some
Yeah,
slides?
yeah, yeah. I give you permission.
Let me see if I can get these up. Um, yeah, so this is three. Let me see if I can do this. So this is the book, standard book. It's got its gold and red, right? So this is it. You see that like that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the carousel. And there's Holden Caulfield with his murder hunting hat, who says like I hunt people in this hat. I dream of murder. And then he always asks where do the ducks go? See, he's detached from reality. He doesn't understand that the ducks go south for the winter. So he's asking where the ducks go, and it's an insight into his kind of split brain. And I think that's really interesting. The book has sold 65 million copies. It's an industry to itself. It has to
Yeah.
be seen as an industry. And that's what Salinger looked like. He was actually on D-Day. I think he was Omaha Beach.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so he had PTSD for
The
sure.
hunt. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is Chapman and Hinckley making the same weird gesture, like with their brain in their hand or shooting to their right temple. Kind of inexplicably, there's Hinckley. Hinckley's in the news today. He was on TMZ. John Hinckley Jr. asked by ex-users to assassinate Donald Trump. How
Jesus.
many times has people tried to kill Trump? I'm not even sure. I think it's very, you're going to tie this in. One of the things that Hinckley was really interested in was Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver had this kind of Phoebe person in there and Jodie Foster. And he identified with this anti-hero Travis Bickle, who's an assassin. He tries to kill like one of these presidential figures. But in this book, this president has been shot. It's his code name. I forgot what his code name was. It was like Rawhide was Reagan's code name, but this is from the book, The Assassin. Hinckley identified with Travis and began to act like him after he'd seen the film 15 times. He bought the same clothes, ate the same foods, drank the same liquors, and invented a girlfriend just had Bickle. What's interesting about this guy Bickle is that he's based on another killer of the guy who tried to kill Wallace. So if you remember the George Wallace murder where he became paralyzed, it was 1974, and this other guy did it, and they based Bickle off that other assassin. So you see this weird thing that happens in our culture where you have fictional assassins and or attempted assassins or whatever are emulating people in fiction. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Another one who person who was a killer who liked Catcher in the Rye and is lesser known than Hinckley and Chapman is a guy by the name of Robert John Bardo, and he killed this actress Rebecca Schaefer. And he had The Catcher in the Rye. A red paperback copy of The Catcher in the Rye was found on the roof of the Beverly Palms Rehabilitation Center on Beverly Boulevard. Bardo, indicated that he threw a red covered paperback book entitled The Catcher in the Rye in the alley while he was running. The discovery of the book harked back to the 1981 shooting of former Beatle John Lennon by one-time mental patient Mark David Chapman in New York City. After the obsessed fan shot the rock singer, he calmly took out a copy of the J.D. Salinger novel and was reading it when police arrived. And the killings were so close to each other that you can find articles that feature Hinckley and Chapman in the
Yeah.
same article. This is literally it. And I'm gonna show you, but Chapman reads from The Catcher in the Rye in court. So you can see that right there. And like there's things about Hinckley, like it's like they're talking about him growing up, like how normal he was. Like he was,
Mm.
Hinckley described his son in junior high school as the kind of kid that anyone would love to have. Popular, good-looking, captain of the basketball team, captain of his football team, president of his homeroom. We just thought the world was going to be his oyster. And then he began to notice a change in John. He began to spend time alone. And Bardo had this like assassin's kit, but he was not insane. Like he was found not insane. Bardo was not insane when he killed the actress, but suffered from a schizophrenic disorder known as splitting, which hampered his ability to form the intent for murder, the psychiatrist testified. Dietz, concluding 8 days on the witness stand, said that Bardo's splitting meant he alternated between seeing Schaefer as all evil or all good, but was not aware of the shift in his emotions. Really strange. And then, like, he was smart enough to hire detectives to like hunt her down, but he was not found. He was guilty by reason of insanity. Before the shootings of Hinckley and Chapman, Catcher in the Rye was featured in a movie about mind control, The Shining, right? And like mind states and things like that. So here is forgot her name, but she's reading The Catcher in the Rye in the morning. And Phoebe, when she's doing her last ride around the carousel, is wearing a blue dress. So I think they threw that in there too. So this is their Catcher in the Rye reference, and that's Danny. Also featured in the movie The Conspiracy Theory with what's
Mel
his name?
Gibson.
Well, thank you, Mel Gibson. And like this is another guy who's done some research about the Freemason aspects, Joe Atwill, about the book. And this is the main character. This is a people shooting hat. I shoot people in this hat. Why is this guy repeating these phrases and then these guys are shooters, right? Both Hinckley and Chapman supposedly shot them. And this is the audiobook. So you see, you can go look at the audiobook on Amazon right now. And that's Holden chain smoking Caulfield with his murder hunting hat, his shooting hat. And some of the references that I use for this are two books, Mind Games by David Whelan and The Murder of John Lennon by Fenton Bresler. And they tie in, there's weird tie-ins, not just between these assassins, like we kind of talked about at the intro, but their handlers or their psychiatrists. So the same psychiatrist who analyzed Chapman worked on the Sirhan case. Like it's unbelievable. But this is from Mind. It's the chapter is titled Mind Control. When you come in to read the detail about Mark Chapman behaved at John Lennon's murder, you will find a striking parallel between the dazed and in a trance-like condition of the two men. He's talking about Sirhan. Mark remembered more of the actual killing, but otherwise the reactions were almost identical. And remember what ex-lieutenant and detective Arthur O'Connor had said, quote, I saw him the night of the murder. I studied him intensely. He looked as if he could have been programmed, and I know what you are going to make of that word. So that's interesting. And then he mentions an odd footnote. This to me is like central to the cases. There's an odd footnote to all this. The principal medical defense witness for Sirhan was Dr. Bernard Diamond of the University of California, one of America's leading psychiatrists to use hypnosis in his work. 13 years later, he was to be one of the defense psychiatrists for Mark's case, so he worked Sirhan and Chapman. His diagnosis for the two men was the same, paranoid schizophrenia. Yet he seems to have used hypnosis, not to have used hypnosis in either of his two interviews with Mark, although he hypnotized Sirhan on 6 of his 8 visits to great effect. For instance, when Dr. Diamond asked Sirhan where he had concealed his gun while waiting for Kennedy, Sirhan, in his trance, went for the inside of his belt on the left side. And it's interesting that they use this word trance because in 51, Holden Caulfield is talking about himself on page 73 that he's in a trance. He's using the same words. It's crazy. And so then there was in these notebooks with strange writing, must kill all RFK, must kill RFK. And then Diamond's asking Sirhan, is this crazy writing? Diamond asks. Yes, 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 Sirhan wrote. Are you crazy? No, no. Well, why are you writing crazy? Practice, practice, practice. Practice for what? Mind control, mind control, mind control was the written reply by Sirhan. So you see this kind of overlap between these guys. Um, so he had Catcher in the Rye. Uh, he Chapman has it. He's walking around. He writes in this something. He goes to the Dakota. He writes on the inscription to Holden Caulfield from Holden Caulfield. This is my statement. And he quotes, the reason I killed John Lennon was to gain prominence to promote the reading of J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye. I'm not saying I'm a messiah or anything like that. If you read the book and you understand my past, you will see that I am indeed the catcher in the rye of this generation. So his identity became caught up in this book for some reason. It's just very strange. And then this is the writer Mark's life changes. So something about this kind of transformation. There's a lot of transformation themes in Catcher in the Rye, the book too, which is interesting. Quote, it is clearly a difficult time for him, and now an ominous new factor came into his life. He became interested in the Catcher in the Rye. We do not know why. We do not know if anyone suggested it to him, and if so, who. Catcher is a book that most people read once in their life in their teens, and that is it. Why on earth, seemingly out of the blue, did Mark suddenly get so involved in a book that, like most of his generation of young Americans, he had already read before at school nearly 10 years earlier? So, like, he buys it. He goes there. I mean, he's reading it. In August 1980, with The Catcher in the Rye, he equally and suddenly mysteriously recovered interest in Lennon, as with Holden Caulfield, he had not thought about for nearly the past 10 years. So he's talking about like he becomes interested in it. Um, he's in Hawaii and then he comes back and then he goes to New York City the day John Lennon died. As he walked 20 blocks to the Dakota on West 72nd Street, incongruous amid the lightly dressed New Yorkers with his heavy winter gear, he realized he was missing a prop. He had with him his double fantasy album, but something was missing. He halted his progress toward Lennon's selected place of execution and dived into a bookshop to emerge with a red paperback copy of The Catcher in the Rye. On the title page, he wrote, "To Holden Caulfield from Holden Caulfield," and below that, this is my statement. I mean, it's just crazy.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and then he like had the book with him. He bought Catcher in the Rye. Then he goes to court. Oh, he writes something to the New York Times after the shooting. On Sunday, February 1st, Mark sat down and wrote to the New York Times in ballpoint capitals a statement, which the newspaper printed 8 days later. Seldom could a book that first appeared in paperback 17 years earlier have had such a glowing sales boost. Quote, it is my sincere belief that presenting this written statement will not only stimulate the reading of J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye, but it will also help many to understand what has happened. If you're able to view the actual copy of The Catcher in the Rye that was taken from me on the night of December 8th, you would find the handwritten words, "This is my statement." Unfortunately, I was unable to continue the stance and have since spoken openly with the police, doctors, and others involved in this case. I now fully realize this should not have been done, for it removed the emphasis that I wanted to place on the book. My wish is for all of you to someday read The Catcher in the Rye. All of my efforts will now be devoted toward this goal, for this extraordinary book holds many answers. My true hope is that in wanting to find these answers, you will read The Catcher in the Rye. Thank you. Mark David Chapman, The Catcher in the Rye. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Hey there! Are you tired of skyrocketing subscription costs? With Q Broadcast, you get an entertainment package that is unmatched by other providers, with all your favorite content in one affordable bundle. Enjoy a 15-day trial for just $14.99. And if you refer 3 friends and they stick around, your subscription is free. Say goodbye to high-priced subscriptions, contracts, and hassles, and say hello to streaming simplicity with Q Broadcast. This changes everything.
Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food. 72 servings per pail, 25 years shelf life. I've had the owner Clayton on the show before. He's a God-fearing, America-loving patriot. Get one of these, get a couple of them, throw them in your basement. It's good to have it, not need it, than to need it and not have it. If you don't want to do that, you can get their seeds. You can plant your own garden, so you don't even have to keep buying them. You can just get the goods and start your own, or you can even get freeze-dried fruits and vegetables like bananas, apples, strawberries, and raspberries. They support the show. It's an honest product. It's a good safety measure to have, and they keep my show free for you. So I'd implore you guys to please go to heavensharvest.com, use the link in the description, promo code TPC. Axios Fitness Coaching is a premium resource for holistic strength and conditioning services. Axios is best known for the Training Club, capital T, capital C, an exclusive community that prioritizes accountability, technique, diet, and nutrition. Everything you need to do to take action against the decay of the modern world. Whether you're looking to improve your physique, build strength, or just take care of your health and fitness, Axios will provide you with the solution that is effective and simple to execute. All you need to do is complete the intake survey, and you can see if you're a good candidate for the training club or any other of the services. And it's going to sponsor the show, so, One company falls off, another one arises. So if you guys like the show, you want to work out, throw the show a couple shekels. Go take the survey. Thank you so much, guys.
Higher ultraviolet exposure is associated with lower mortality. The United Kingdom is a high latitude and low sunlight country. Researchers there collected data on over 360,000 participants in a study of UV exposure via solarium use. When compared with non-users, solarium users had 15% risk lowered of all-cause mortality, 23% lower risk of cardiovascular mortality, 14% lower risk of cancer mortality, and a 12% lower risk of non-cardiovascular, non-cancer mortality. In other words, all other causes. Quoting the researchers, our study adds to the growing evidence that the benefits of UV exposure outweigh the risks in low sunlight environments. A link to the original publication is available in the box below the video. Get some UV light this winter. Immerse yourself in the tranquility of the blue. Visit a Blue Room soon. www.blueroom.com.
Then he shows up. He shows up at court with the Catcher in the Rye, so he's carrying it, and he goes in and he makes a statement. He says, asked if anything he had say to the court before sentence was pronounced. This is, I think, August 1980. Mark opened his copy of The Catcher in the Rye and read an extract to the hush, part 49. He had worked it out carefully. If you want to check it for yourself, it is to be found on the 173 of the Bantam paperback. Holden Caulfield is talking to his young sister Phoebe, the only person in the world whom he really loves, about what he wants to be when he grows up. She suggests a lawyer like their father, but Holden dismisses lawyers as phonies. What he wants to be is a catcher in the rye, and he explains what he means in this passage, cited by Mark David Chapman on his Day of Judgment. Quote, anyway, I keep picturing all these little kids playing some game in this big field of rye, and all thousands of little kids, and nobody is around, nobody big. I mean, except me, and I'm standing on the edge of some craggy cliff. What I have to do, I have to catch everybody if they start to go over the cliff. I mean, they are running and they don't look where they are going. I have to come out from somewhere and catch them. That's all I'd do all day. I'd just be the catcher in the rye. So that was his statement. And this is Hinckley. This is Rendezvous from Destiny. Rawhide down.
Let me interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
If this whole like podcast, this presentation itself, let's say Catcher in the Rye didn't exist, and these are all fictional characters. If this itself was like a movie, I'd be like, well, Ramsey's a schizo, but it's reality.
Right.
Like
no,
if this was just if somebody showed this to me, I'd be like, yeah, it's a fun Netflix thing. Yeah, I mean, kind of out there. That would never happen. One book, all these guys killing presidents, and whatever. But this is you're showing.
This isn't even my work. You can go read Fenton Breslin's book.
I'm just
reading
it
to
you. Funny. It's just like, but it's not. If this was a movie, I'd say this is stupid. But this is
it's not believable.
But here it is. Sorry, keep going.
These are different books. Like, so then there's Hinckley. This is 3 months after Chapman. He is doing this weird traveling, like Ruth, like Mangione, right? Yeah. Like Crooks, maybe. I don't know. Quote, the 4-day trip was a blur of fast food and brief stops. Las Vegas, Cheyenne, Chicago, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. Traveling through Utah, he awoke from a brief nap to find the bus hurtling through a massive snowstorm. He spent much of the trip slouched in a window seat, watching the scenery stream by or reading The Catcher in the Rye, J.D. Salinger's novel of teenage angst and alienation. He identified with the story's main character, Holden Caulfield, but the book was also special to him because he knew that John Lennon's assassin had pulled it from his pocket and leafed through it moments after gunning down the rock and roll icon. Questionable. Lennon, who had been killed 3.5 months earlier, was Hinckley's favorite musician. Even so, he sometimes felt that he identified more with Lennon's killer than with Lennon himself. And then, like several of his favorite books, Catcher in the Rye, he brought along a copy of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet and a book called Strawberry Fields Forever. I mean, it's just really crazy. And then here's George Bush Sr. This would be the beneficiary of the death of Reagan. Is there a book that inspired you? There was this marvelous book by Salinger called Catcher in the Rye. That's what he says. And here's Bill Gates. These are, you can go and look these up. Like, this is
Yeah.
crazy. Bill Gates from 2013. You may notice there aren't any novels on my list this year, but it's not that I don't enjoy fiction. I've read The Catcher in the Rye a bunch of times. It's one of my favorite books ever. So, like, these two high-level WASP kind of Brahmin types love Catcher in the Rye. Why? I mean, they're involved in so much nefarious stuff. It's
Yeah.
off the charts. Then you have Ruth and Crooks. We've talked about that. Good Girl was kind of based on The Catcher in the Rye. There was also a movie featuring Jared Leto called Chapter 27 because there's 26 chapters in Chapter Catcher in the Rye. And so this is kind of another story. It put on a lot of weight. And there's a lot of themes he's repeating. It's interesting to watch because he's repeating quotes from Catcher in the Rye throughout the movie. So I'd suggest people check that out. But there's an interesting scene. You can watch it on YouTube. But also, he had this kind of almost a ritual thing where he would put things in his hotel room, and one of them was the Wizard of Oz stuff too, which is known to also, like, when people are programming people's brains, they use the Wizard of Oz themes. And then Holden kind of named, like, I broke down the name Holden and the call. Sorry,
You're
I'm just
good.
getting through a cold.
You're good.
Various traditions have viewed it as a sign of spiritual or psychic abilities. In some folklore, the call was believed to bestow second sight or the ability to see in the future. So that's it. And then Ruth, just like strange stuff. This was from Surge, the New York. This is Mangione. The New York Police Department claims to have found the CEO shooter, that's Mangione, backpack near the carousel in Central Park, exactly where the Catcher in the Rye ends. And then in the chapter where he meets Luce, it's a stand-in for Henry Luce of Time magazine, who ended up buying the Zapruder film, right? The person who took a shot at Wallace, his name was Arthur Bremer, so that's another assassin. And Bremer was an interesting character too. And I can show some videos of him, but he had a diary, and he was the influence for Travis Bickle. So you go Bremer to Bickle to Hinckley, which is really strange. But one of the other strange things is that Bremer had watched Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange, and it was influenced by Alex DeLarge. So it's this weird kind of overlapping between fictional characters and real characters that I can't explain. I mentioned the Cultural Cold War, J.D. Salinger. This is Bremer. He was the shooter of Wallace. And Wallace, I think, was kind of like a third party guy. I think it was important for somebody to get rid of him because I think he was going to try to take votes from Nixon, if I remember correctly. Bickle was partially based on the real life assassin Arthur Bremer. There's Bremer after he shot Wallace. This is from Bremer's diary. So he says on May 4th, I think he shot Wallace like 4 days later. He's traveling around like these other guys like Hinckley and Chapman. Milwaukee saw Clockwork Orange and thought about getting Wallace all through the picture. Fantasizing myself as Alec, or Alex DeLarge, that's the main character, but without my brothers. Just a little of the old ultra-violence. I've decided Wallace would have the honor of, what would you call it? In death he lays with presidents. Wallace dead, who cares, editors will say. So he's like plotting to kill him. So the famous De Niro character, Travis Bickle, is influenced by a real assassin. And there's like a backstory behind Bremer because like one of the more sinister people in American history, Howard Hunt, there's allegations that he went in and faked the diary. So that's a whole nother show, but it just shows like there's all kinds of machinations behind some of these characters, who are handled. Hunt reports that the day after the assassination attempt, he received a call from Chuck Colson asking him to break into Bremer's apartment and plant leftist literature to connect him to the Democrats. So there's Mangione, his connection to Kaczynski. He made a comment on Kaczynski's industrial society and its future. He was not a United Healthcare customer, which is strange. And then there's like a post, like we were talking about this guy had everything ahead of him. He threw it all away to shoot them. This is Henry Murray was Kaczynski's psychiatrist. And the stuff he did for 3 years, like it's off the charts. In these sessions, subjects faced a hostile interlocutor who mocked and dismantled their beliefs, often with the aid of essays they'd written. Encounters were filmed, and participants were later forced to watch their own humiliation. Electrodes monitored physiological responses, heart rate, sweat, adding a clinical layer to the psychological assault. Murray's goal was to observe how young men, presumably still forming their identities, cope with extreme stress and confrontation. That's what this thing is. Do you see how all of these other guys,
Hmm.
their identities morphed? So they're tinkering, Murray's tinkering around with people's identities, including Kaczynski, I think from 58 to 61, before all these assassins.
It
So
ma
they're studying this.
it makes sense. Not what obviously doesn't make sense is like again, the world is your oyster, Giga Chad, the whole 9 yards. What does make sense is, I mean, if I'm if I'm in the CIA or whatever, the national security apparatus, and I want to try some, experimental shit, I'm not going to waste the experimental shit on some nobody. I want a Giga Chad because the fact that they're a Giga Chad, you're all. If I have some experimental new growth hormone, I'm not giving it to me. I'm giving it to Tom Brady, and I'm like, because he's already at the apex. I don't want to waste this thing, and that's just a drug. Now imagine if it was classified. Imagine if it's assassinations, not just can you run the 40-yard dash faster. That's what I would want to do. So to me, it's pure evil. But if you were to be that person doing these things, yeah, you want the primo racehorse. You don't waste carbon fiber on like my Civic. You put it on a Formula One car to shave off that last little bit. And so it makes sense that you go for Giga Chads, right?
Right. What's Kaczynski's IQ is like 165 or something
Yeah, it says right there,
crazy.
167, halfway down.
Yeah, like
Kaczynski entered
yeah.
Harvard at 16, a math prodigy with an IQ. Yeah, you don't want it on. You're not putting it on me. You're not wasting it on me, right? If I was MK Ultra, that would be such like a compliment. They'd be like, you really thought something to me.
Right. I mean, that's what that, and they had some kind of fixation right after World War II with like gifted students and stuff. Like they were trying to
Sure,
find gifted students
all
out of
that
public schools and groom them. There's like all kinds of stories about,
Phenomena by Annie Jacobson is all
yeah,
about that
yeah.
stuff.
Oh, is that right? I
Yuri
didn't know that.
Geller and all that stuff. The ESP and PSY and all that. I mean, those are special access programs. The same classification as the stealth bomber, remote viewing. I think it was a Grill Flame that was a special access program. I mean, they did all this shit. Yeah, they were really into. I mean,
How many pe how many people did Kaczynski kill or bomb? Like
I
he went after his own class. Like he bombed professors and like uh heads of like CEOs, like crazy stuff, man.
do you
Like he
think
wasn't
that
going
was planned, or do you think that was like, oh
don't know. I
shit,
don't know. I don't
because it
know.
seems counterintuitive if you're in like the technological elite to do that. It might have just been a flex. Like, let's see if you can do this.
Like
You know
I'm gonna get back my own class or something like that. Like
that
he
makes me
got
think
a
he retained part of his personality and was like, it was like his like revenge arc.
yeah, makes sense, right? So he's bitter because he kind of dropped out of academia or
Yeah,
whatever.
and
So
he's
I'm gonna
like,
get
yeah.
academics.
Or I mean, if you're in the CIA, but again, if I have some guy, if I have some Kaczynski character, you can only do so many bombings before you get caught. Yeah, I'm not gonna waste it on him going and bombing like a St. Vincent de Paul or a
Right,
Walmart. I'm
right.
gonna be like, let's
I'm
go for
going
some
after the
Harvard
Yaleys.
professors. Let's
Right,
can you
right. There
can
you
you
go.
get it? I know you can't get into the White House. Let's see what can you do. How close can you get? That might have just been like a trial run where they're just like, God damn, we got this guy to do this. Or you could even go one step further and say it wasn't that he was bitter and it wasn't that he was turning against his handlers. Maybe that's the ultimate test. Can we get him to go kill his friends? You know?
Right. I mean, you're talking about like you just bring up Manchurian Candidate. If you remember that
Yeah.
famous introductory scene, they're the hypnotized party in Manchukuo or Manchuria. Who's the nicest person in your troop? Oh, it's this guy. Everybody loves him. Shoot him in the head, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how it starts.
Yeah.
And
Kill a puppy. Yeah.
it's interesting tie-ins to all this because the main character in Manchurian Candidate, which came, I mean, it's a whole nother arc of the story, but it kind of fits in. Manchurian came out in 63, right? And it's about the main character is Raymond Shaw, who's in the Korean War, gets abducted by the communists, and then handed over to an American handler, right, to malign communism and take over and have this fake narrative. But he has handlers all the way through, so somebody's overlooking him. What happens to Oswald? He's at Atsugi, then he comes home, then he mysteriously somehow gets into Russia and finds this woman and is in Minsk and all these things. And he's being handled the whole time. Like he's got Carrie Thornley and this Macmillan woman who knows him in Russia, which is really strange. And she ends up writing, I mean, it came out in these JFK docs that she was a CIA asset the whole time. So she wrote Marina and Me, which is like uh Oswald's the lone nut, it's like that kind of baloney, but like if you can see the Intel imprint. Anyway, he's handled the whole time all the way to Dallas. It's so weird. And Raymond Shaw, the same thing in the fake movie. He's being handled by multiple people, and he's handed over from communist state to, the land
And
of the free, right? The
and I
capitalistic.
and another it might be Phenomena by Annie Jacobson. I've read all of her books, but I think it's still Phenomena. It was one of like the top guys in like the it might have been one of the Dulles brothers. It was one of like the top in that whole 50s, 60s kind of the players. It wasn't J. Edgar Hoover or James Jesus Angleton. It might have been one of the Dulles brothers.
Well, I can tell you for a fact that it was Alan Dulles who announced brain warfare
Well, that it
one
was
week.
his son was in Korea, and his
Correct.
son had like a
Brain
permanent brain
injury.
injury, and that's where the term was coined, brainwashing, because they didn't want to believe that it's back in the 50s, they have much tighter control on narratives. You don't want these soldiers, whatever, on the radio or reports coming out that they're betraying their country, America's doing the wrong thing. So what they do is they go, these goddamn communists, there's no bottom to their souls. Like, they'll brainwash, and that's where brainwashing gets entering, like around the same time that MK Ultra's happening.
Right before it, really.
Yeah.
Because this was the stuff. There were supposedly pilots that were coming back who had been captured,
Uh-huh.
who had been behaviorally modified.
Yeah.
They were sympathy for their captors, right? It was
Yeah.
actually studied. Actually, there's a really interesting study by Jolyon West, who like his whole story is crazy, but he got his start doing interrogations, just like Salinger, and also trying to figure out what was going on in the psychology of these guys who had been captured by the communists, right? I mean, and so it's interesting. I mean, this whole narrative that I'm talking about, it shows how fiction and nonfiction blurred.
Uh-huh.
Like, because the Manchurian Candidate, there's so many things in there. It was written by Condon in 1959. And it's like direct quotes of the Manchurian Candidate, the movie, are from the book. But like they knew all that stuff. So all that
And
do of the Korean War and communism and cultural Cold War and Cold War and MK Ultra's all in that stuff.
and probably like the biggest game of, I mean, great, not Nintendo, but like one of the huge things, like every dude my age has played it a million times, is Call of Duty Black Ops, where you're this guy, Mason, you're a Special Activities Division assassin, and the entire thing is Mason, what do the numbers mean? Because he was captured by the Soviets, tortured, and he's kind of going crazy, and eventually it's like the coordinates for a bombing, but he gets to meet with Kennedy in like the Pentagon, and he's having all these flashes about killing him. And then the movie kind of finally ends, and it was like the Soviets tried to brainwash our guys, make a Manchurian Candidate, and they failed. And then it shows
Wow.
the Soviet scientists going, "What do you mean failed?" And it shows a black and white real footage. I mean, obviously it's all fake, of Dealey Plaza before he gets in the cab, and you
Wow.
see in the background, you see it zooms in, and you see Mason's face, and it's indicated that he killed Kennedy.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that's
That's
like the
amazing.
biggest game of like late 2000s, like Call of Duty. It is like I mean, it's like a meme, Mason, the numbers. But
Right. It
like,
sounds like it's very well written because that overlaps with
well, it's
what's going
also
on
like
in.
that's what this isn't some obscure game. It's kind of like, it's like, okay, so the new generation doesn't read. How do we get them? Call of Duty. Like,
Right. That's
yeah,
incredible.
yeah,
It's
Mason,
really
the
interesting.
numbers.
It
Yeah.
overlaps with the Manchurian Candidate because the whole theme is they're having dreams about being abducted.
The
They
whole
don't know
so
they're
the
real.
whole game is
Yeah.
he has three scientists he's trying to kill. I think they're Operation Paperclip scientists. It's Steiner something and something, and the entire time is chasing him down. And then he has a guy, so he gets thrown into a gulag for Kuda, and he escapes. He leads a rebellion, and he escapes, and he has a guy that helps him, a Soviet that becomes his friend, and his name's I think Reznov. And so the whole thing is he escapes the Soviet Union, and then it's a whole campaign of like you're fighting your way out to get back to America with your friend Reznov. And then it turns out that Reznov was killed back in the gulag, and he's hallucinating Reznov the whole time. He's like, "What do you mean, Reznov?" They're like, "Dude, Reznov's been dead for years." But the whole game is you're with Reznov. He's helping you. He's helping you kill like people, and it's not real. And the entire thing is like you're hallucinating it. And it's like, well, then so there's scenes where Reznov like kills someone that's sneaking up on Mason. Mason's like, "You got my back, thank you." And it's like, well, who is like those were you, but you were splitting into personalities, and you thought Reznov was real. And then again, the kind of the culmination is that it's not shown, but it's indicated. They go, your brainwashing failed, and he goes, "What do you mean failed?" And you see Kennedy walking by, and then it freezes, and it zooms in, and it's grainy, and you see Mason in the background. And it's like, well, why was Mason at Dealey Plaza?
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
it's like the other than like Grand Theft Auto or Halo, that's like I'm not even a Call of Duty guy, and I know it like the back of my hand. That's
Well,
how
it's
much it was
incredible.
pounded into my generation.
Right. Well, that's incredible because if you like, the Manchurian Candidate was written by Condon, 1959. It was, we know that Kennedy was a reader. He liked to read spy novels. He read James Bond, and he read Condon's novel. One of his best friends is Frank Sinatra, who helped him get elected in
Yeah.
1960. The green light for this movie, A Manchurian Candidate, came from Kennedy's influence. He knew somebody at one of the studios and told Sinatra to make the movie. And the book emulates the Kennedy assassination to a certain extent. There's weird overlaps because rifles and shooting and all this. Well, that's what happens in the final denouement or the end of Manchurian Candidate is the shooting of a candidate, right? Um, at Madison Square Garden of all places. And it's basically
Oh,
Manhattan.
and
But
I was,
yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, it's
they
in that,
take
but here's the
that.
here's the crazy thing, even crazier about Manchurian Candidate is it was take it was basically financed and produced by Sinatra's company. He got great actors to be on there. Vivian Lee had just come off of Psycho. Lawrence, I forgot his name, was the main character. But he decided because he owned the production, he took it off of the thing out of circulation for 25 years, so nobody saw it. And this is before like internet streaming or anything like that. So it just basically became disappeared from the public consciousness until 1998. It's incredible. And it's actually, I mean, it gets deeper. I don't know.
There's a
It's
there's
we
a
I mean there's so much high strangeness involved in the Manchurian Candidate. I can't even get into it.
so
It's all I'll do the next show I do with you, we'll break down the Manchurian Candidate
okay.
because it is absolutely incredible. They have NLP references in there, neuro-linguistic
Uh,
programming. There's like incest between the mother. There's visual symbols. So like even the discussion we've had today where you see this kind of morphing of concepts and things like that, it's all inculcated in the Manchurian Candidate film in a really clever way. It's very subtle and it's very good. And it's spanned the test of time. I mean, it's incredible. And you have to look at it also, just an interesting note is like three very important black and white movies all came out around the same time. Doctor Strangelove, The Manchurian Candidate, and 7 Days in May. And Manchurian Candidate and 7 Days in May were both promoted by Kennedy before he was
hmm
assassinated on November 22nd, 1963.
Another another huge installment of Call of Duty came out in like 2021, I think. And I've actually just but it's Call of Duty Cold War, and the entire thing is you're a character named Bell, and the entire thing is you're getting MK Ultra, and it always they strap him down, and they put like a syringe into
Wow.
the eye, and then you go into he's in this like weird jungle, and but he'll find like almost like big computer parts Like it would be like if like a hard drive the size of a building, and it's like now go in, and they're trying to unlock the deeper parts of his mind. And they're like go in, and they keep doing it again and again and again, and it's kind of like it feels like a dream, but it's like surreal. You're in the jungle, and then there's like a hard drive or a CPU or something. You're like walking into it, and it's like we have to go deeper, we have to go deeper, we have to go deeper, because
Wow.
he is like the perfect Manchurian candidate. But whereas Black Ops was the Soviets got to you, this was the U.S. doing it, and then it ends with they kill him because he knows too much. That was another
Wow.
huge. That was 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Call of Duty Cold War, yeah. And oh, and one of the big things is and so in Black Ops he's meeting with Kennedy. I just remember this. You go and you meet with Reagan, and
Wow.
I just remembered you
Wow.
go and you meet with Reagan in the Evolve.
Wow. Wow. That is crazy. Look, this is exactly what um Kaczynski went through, something like this.
Oh yeah, no, that's what they do in the Cold War. They hide him down and they put us intraocularly and they go right through the eye into the brain. Yeah, we're going in,
Wow.
Bell.
And that's what Arthur Bremer's talking about. He's
What the?
watching this same movie with and then he goes and kills Wallace like four or
And
5 days later. This is it. Like people
fucking
don't know, they don't know how deep
wait,
Kaczynski went.
wait.
Like they just think Kaczynski went through some kind of like aggressive training. No,
Uh,
he was in this kind of stuff. Like he was hooked up to electrodes, bro.
wait.
58 to 61.
There's another huge game, Far Cry 5, where you're out in Montana and like it just basically like the social order falls and like the National Guard kind of quarantines the whole state. But you're in there and it's like the sheriffs versus like these like super like ultra nationalist Christians, cultists, and the whole game is just kind of fighting each other. And they take over different parts of this county, and you have to like liberate the parts of the county. You're the sheriff, and you're fighting the guerrillas. The guerrillas capture you and some friends, and they hold you in an insane asylum. In the insane asylum, they strap you down, and they're playing a movie on the projector. And what the movie is they somehow got video recording of the sheriff's like hideout. Like let's say like let's just say it's my house. And they run you again and again and again. They give you a drug called Bliss, and you run through this like kill house where you're going through every door, and you're kind of every time you do it, it happens throughout the game. You get a little farther, and it always ends with you coming in the very end and you kill a guy. And then it turns out that they finally there's an activation code on the radio, and it's a song. And as soon as it starts playing, these guys like run through like the headquarters, and they know it like the back of their hand, and they kind of like black out, and they go and they kill all of their friends, and then the music stops. They're like, "Oh my, what happened?" And it's the entire time they're MK Ultraing you with a trigger song. It happens in an insane asylum, and then you snap out of it, and you're not next to the dead body of your friend, and you're like, "What the?" And that's the entire thing. Is like that's how they get you. That's another like Far Cry is a massive game series. The entire thing is it's an insane asylum with a trigger mechanism song, and they
Wow.
drug
So they
you
have a
and they treat
trigger.
you, and then so whatever happens is because they don't know when you're gonna go back to your buddies, but they know eventually you're gonna end. Just law of averages. At a certain point, one of you is gonna be in the guerrilla headquarters, and then they just play the song over the radio, and it's just like eyes gloss over,
So
and
the
they just
song
start
is the
boom, boom.
trigger.
The song
If
is the
you remember,
trigger.
I don't, well, have you seen the 1963 version of the Manchurian Candidate?
No.
Okay, because the trigger is the Queen of Diamonds. So
Yeah.
you'll see that theme if we do another show on Manchurian. I'll show
Yeah.
you because they have that trigger, and they do it deliberately because Raymond Shaw has this fixation with his mom, like he loves and hates her or whatever. So the Queen is a stand-in, so it'll hit deep into his psyche when he sees it. But yeah, so and they say Sirhan, they had certain triggers for Sirhan. Like I mentioned some of the stuff. We could do a whole nother show on Sirhan. I know a lot about that case. But they said that there were certain taps they could do, and he would fall into some pre-programmed post-hypnotic suggestion, and that's why had this handler who nobody ever discovered. She's known as the woman with the polka dot dress that people saw. And when RFK got shot, she came out of some door and said, "We got him, we got him, we got him." But they think that she got up there and got him into position, and then he got triggered. He was essentially triggered.
It's yeah,
So all these guys, the guys who write for these video games are really
you
good.
know
Like
what? And some of the guys that run the brain control brainwashing on you
they're good
in the
too.
game, they're all GWAT vets.
They're all what?
They're all war on terror vets, Iraq, Afghanistan vets,
Oh,
because it
wow,
takes place in
interesting.
2020.
Well, I had a guy on
Fucking yeah.
there's a journalist, you should talk to him. He's a really cool guy, Kit Clarenberg, who I did a show with him about the ongoing thing of MK Ultra,
Yeah,
right?
put me in touch with
Because
them.
but oh yeah, no, yeah.
I'll make a note. I'll text you after.
Yeah, it's Clarenberg, Klarenberg. But he said like this whole sensory deprivation and everything was going on at that base in Cuba. What's the name of that
Guantanamo?
basin? Yeah, Guantanamo.
Camp
Like
X.
during the War on Terror, and they were trying to strip. They got these really innocent guys who were Arabic or something like that, and who they weren't like the real like stereotypical terrorist. They might have been complainers or something, but they really tried to like reprogram them
Yeah.
and strip them down. And people can't sensory deprivation is a form of torture,
Oh, it
and
is. You
it's
can see the pictures of them at Guantanamo. They have the face mask on, the
exactly.
hands, the ears, and then
Exactly.
they're put on like a
Exactly.
gurney, so they don't even know if they're standing up.
Yeah, no, they did horrible stuff.
Oh yeah.
And kill him. So people who think like this stuff is in the past, no.
No.
And that's this
No.
whole thing, the whole mystery of,
What the fuck?
Ruth and Mangione and all this stuff. It goes back to these type of things. That's kind of like the theme. But they use these, like you mentioned, triggers. Like Catcher in the Rye seems to have some form of trigger mechanism for these guys, or there's some passage within there or something. I don't know what it is. But it reminds me of this book. Like there's so many other things. If you ever watch the movie Evil Dead, where they find that like possessed book in some cabin, and that just opens up this whole like Pandora's box of hell. Have you ever seen Evil Dead?
No.
Okay, don't watch it. It's terrible. It's like a total slasher movie. Anyway,
Fucking
um,
I played another game last fall, not nearly well as known, called Trepang, where you're going and you're like fighting this evil corporation who's trying to take over the world. And at the end of the game, after you do the job, you come back to your homies and you back to the whatever CIA headquarters, and they're all like, "Good job," and then they kill you. And the entire time in and I think the game, your name is like 105 or something, and then they kill you, and the next guy comes out and his name's 106, and it's the entire time you're just that was a much smaller indie game, but that came out like last year. Like so, forget that one. Far Cry and the Call of Duty, dude, those are I don't know, gaming's not your generation. Those are massive titles.
tens of
Like,
millions of players, or if not hundreds of millions,
well,
maybe globally. I don't know.
Call of Duty is it's like a meme how big it is. It's like the Walmart McDonald's game. Far Cry a little less, but it's still a massive AAA game title, dude. It is so crazy.
The writing is good, man. Those
It is
guys are good
very
writers.
good. But I'm just thinking of that, like a
It
one up.
emulates. It just shows that it's a theme that fiction is a reflection of nonfiction, and then it flops back into
And the Call of
nonfiction to fiction to nonfiction
Yeah, and the
again.
Call of Duty ones is like
They
those
rhyme.
are the whole thing is like they are like real characters though. It's you get to see Kennedy, you get to see McNamara, you get to see, Kissinger, you get to see him in the game like Reagan, they got praised because like the graphics are so realistic. They got like every wrinkle in his skin down. But yeah, you're going and meeting with them like in the Oval Office and it's like and then
That's incredible.
you're hunting down like killing a CIA spy, but it's all like those are huge. And then, but those take place in the Cold War. Far Cry takes place, I think, in 2019, and the entire thing is like the power. Like you think you're winning, you think that you're gonna like make a comeback, and then it turns out like their ace in the hole is like they've MK Ultra'd you, and they like you don't even have to do it right away. You just let them go, and eventually they'll all go and go back to their bases, and then you play the song over the radio, and it's like when it happens, it's like the
That's
vision
the
goes
trigger
red,
mechanism.
and then
Yeah.
you always like wake up in a field after. And like
Wow.
even in it, when you
So you
kill,
have total amnesia.
yeah, so when
So
you
it's
kill
hypnotic amnesia,
when
right?
you kill the head guerrilla leader, um, the other guys they don't even kill you, even though you just killed the leader. because they wake him up and everyone's like, he's a traitor, and they're like, no, like he got brainwashed, like this wasn't him, and they like let you, because they know they've seen it before. They're like, this wasn't. It'd be like if you showed up, like let's say you and I did a podcast in person and you killed me, everyone would be like, kill Will, and then someone else is like, I think he got MK Ultra because he and Tommy were friends, and then like they let you go because it's like it wasn't intentional. But you always wake up and it always takes place in an insane asylum, and they give you a drug called Bliss, and
It's amazing. So you just happened upon the story of hypnotic amnesia.
uh
And if you look into Sirhan,
oh
he
yeah,
has
they all black
total
out.
total blanks. He doesn't remember the shooting. He says he kind of does, but he can't retell it. So he has some form of amnesia. And well, if I do that next show, we'll set up
Yeah,
a next show
well, yeah, no, we need to
because
know
it's
like
involved in Manchurian Candidate.
what the
So it's
fuck.
and yeah, it's crazy.
What's getting me though is just kind of like the realization that like it's clearly been adapted for mass consumption just because of my generation. Sure, people still read, but it's like I'm the video game generation, and it's like, well, where did these sneak in? And it's like they snuck into the biggest titles. They didn't sneak in at all. I mean, in my
Well,
generation, you could say to probably 9 out of 10, it's like Mason, the numbers, and they'd be like, what do they mean? Like it's a meme. It's that
is
well
there
known.
somebody from the national security state or what's called the deep state involved in these video games and putting these narratives out into
Of
the public?
course they are. With a one-off, Black Ops One, I'd say you could write that off as a quit because the entire thing is about the Cold War. It's about the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's about everything. You could just say, okay, MK Ultra maybe, but it's happened again and again.
Let me ask you another question. The army back in my day, when the very beginning of the internet, they actually put out video games to put for people to play
Yeah,
to train them.
yeah.
So how many of these are the inner so-called quote entertainment unquote
Oh,
to
100%.
train kids to join the military gung ho and go to Iraq or Iraq?
100%. Yeah, no, but it's just like,
How many of those guys who were just firing off multiple rounds, listening to heavy metal in Iraq, had actually gotten their training going playing Call of Duty?
well, you hear that a ton of times. You hear people
Yeah.
kind of talking about it. They're like, yeah, I remember
Oh,
going to the recruiter's office, and they're like, it's just like Call of Duty.
yeah. Like, because that's what people do. They put on some tunes and play Call of Duty. Put
Yeah,
on some
it's fun.
Metallica, and that's the stories what you hear in Iraq.
Yeah,
They're listening to heavy metal, just
yeah.
blowing the crap out of everything.
And like, listen, as someone who like wasn't in the Middle East, and as somebody who like has no intention to kill anybody, I will tell you, like, they're very fun games. Like, it's very, they're not force feeding you medicine. It's the spoonful of sugar. It's fun. They're addicting your shit. You're playing with your buddies. You're all laughing, and it's yeah, it's a really fun game. But like,
Have
yeah,
you
that
ever seen there's like this mind control magician whose name I can't remember, but he put up this fake game and he hypnotizes a guy and he goes through zombie land. Have you seen that?
no,
Yeah, it's always scared me because some certain people, like on the, I'm not a doctor in hypnotism by any stretch of the imagination, but certain people are, we're on a scale where certain people are more suggestible, they're more susceptible to hypnotism. Some can't, but
yeah.
this video game, he just hit that button, toot, 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 and the guy literally, it's almost like his eyes rolled back in his head. Like he knew that he had him in a deep suggestible state. And like you put him through, he moved him into this other thing, and he had all these fake zombies, like what was in the video game. Then he put him back into the thing and put him back in front of the video. He had no idea what happened to him. Like he literally had gone through some kind of zombie apocalypse and then put him back in front of the video game, and his friends were all in on it. He was like, wow, that was a really intense game.
And it makes sense not only for the obvious reasons, to have somebody assassinate someone for you. That's kind of the holy grail, but also to truly not that's why there's like need to know shit. It's like it's like they do SEER training, right? Survive, evade, resist, and escape, I think. Um, and that they teach you how to be interrogated. You're supposed to give up little nuggets so that they stop interrogating you. But then they reach a point where, I mean, you even talk to like the most hardcore like Delta Force guys. They're like everyone has a breaking point. Eventually, if they're just like dipping your feet in boiling oil, you're gonna start telling them what they know. Whether you're a human, which is why there's need to know. They can't torture something out of you that you don't know, which is you'll hear a lot of like CIA pilots for the U-2, the SR-71, all those back in the Cold War, they'd say like, no, we actually didn't know. So they could start chopping off your toes, and you'd be like, I actually don't know what my mission was. Well, if you were assassin, it's much harder. If you're a pilot and you're flying over, they could tell you, hey, you're flying over this country to take these pictures. You might not actually know what the real mission is. You're just flying the plane. You can't do that if you're an assassin. If you're an assassin, they say, hey, go kill Will Ramsey. Like, you can't really not need to know it. Because if you got caught, you'd be like, I killed Will Ramsey, and these are the guys that told me. The Holy Grail would be, even if you tortured them, they'd be like, if you had amnesia, you'd be like, I actually don't know. I legitimately don't know. And they could start chopping off your limbs and putting you through the worst torture, and it wouldn't matter if they completely broke your will or sodium pentothal or whatever. If you actually didn't know, you can't give it up. You can't give up what you don't know. If I got kidnapped and tortured for like nuclear codes, I'd be like, I actually, I'll tell you numbers to get you to stop, but I don't know. And that's why it's like the Holy Grail. Wow. Of course, you'd want Manchurian Candidate.
Wait till you see my Manchurian Candidate presentation.
All right, yeah.
Remember all this stuff. Yeah. Remember hypnotic amnesia. Remember all these things, because it'll blow you away. Here's the thing. Finishing up on Kaczynski. Yeah. He had a code name called Lawful. The experience was particularly intense. Over 3 years, he endured roughly 200 hours of these sessions. Murray himself described the interrogations as vehement, sweeping, and personally abusive, a stark contrast to the ethical norms emerging in psychological research at the time. So he has this young kid who's like 16 or 17, and the 17-year bombing campaign that killed 3 and injured 23. So, I mean, incredible stuff. So that's kind of like the tie-in to today.
Yeah, no, I don't mean to end it abruptly, but I have a phone call I got to take in like 3 minutes. So
all right, well, let's wrap it up. Anyway, there's a lot more. I could do like 4 or 5 hours on this, but we could do a part 2.
We'll do a Manchurian Candidate one, and I won't have a time restraint. But like,
well, this one I can do another 2 hours because I got
on this. Okay, then we'll just do part 2 with this.
Okay, good.
Okay, we'll do part 2 with this. Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to clip it early.
I don't mind. We've been going for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So
yeah, dude.
It's all good. It ties into so many things. We can bring it into the public and stuff. But yeah, the next set of slides I think you'll find really interesting. And then I can also just bring up the Manchurian Candidate if and when we talk again.
Yeah, no, we will not if we're gonna do it.
All right, cool.
I'll text you after this. I got
all right,
but
peace,
I'll text you this link. It'll be up tomorrow. Guys, go to the description. Please go grab his books. Pay the man. Go to his Twitter. All that good shit. Put a couple shekels in his pocket, Mr. Ramsey. Thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
God bless
everybody. Thank you so much. Stay safe. Peace.